Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good day to you. I think if Edmund Burke were alive today, he would say that what we're really doing here is so very little. It's shameful when we could do so much. I want to say this. I'm going to say it about every chance I get. We could stop this today. We've just come from a 3-hour rules meeting, and hearing people on the floor and a lot of my colleagues, I have the sense that they don't have any idea what a government shutdown was. All of a sudden, it's starting to hurt. Let's pick this piece over here, that one over there, and we can fix that. 800,000 people who work for the United States government are being used as pawns. We are hurting all of the citizens of the United States who need the services that those 800,000 people provide. We have one thing to do, Mr. Speaker, one thing. We can take from the desk and concur with the Senate CR. That's it. It doesn't have to go back to the Senate. It can go directly to the President of the United States, maybe even before the big meeting today. Sign it, and it's over with. But no, we're not going to do that. And I don't believe that this stuff was written today because there's a particular sympathy for patients at NIH, or the visitors to the national parks, or the citizens of the District of Columbia. These proposals are cynical attempts to make these things pinch just a little bit less. Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that 30 sick children, most with cancer, were turned away from NIH clinical trials because the government shut down. Should they be pawns in this political, cynical game to hurt the health care bill? This morning, the majority proposes to reopen NIH, or part of it. Yesterday, cameras were dispatched around the country to capture the footage of museums and monuments closed. This morning, the majority proposes they're going to open those sites. The majority is making itself clear. Anytime they see a bad headline, they're going to bring a bill to the floor and make it go away. At this rate, it could be a year from now before we ever finally come to some conclusion thereon, because nobody has said anything about what the end game is here. How long are you going to hold the government country hostage? Surely it doesn't have anything to do with health care anymore after yesterday. Now, if the majority really cared, we'd reopen the entire government, all of NIH, national parks, right here, right now, on this floor, in this action we're taking today. If the majority held a simple vote on a clean version of the Senate CR, the government shutdown would be closed upon the President's signature. Now, this afternoon, I will give every member of this chamber a chance to do just that. As I did just in the Rules Committee, I want you to know that the opportunity to vote for the CR in the government shutdown failed 9-4 on a party line vote. That tells us something about why we're here today and what the purpose is for all of this. Now, let me be clear. This amendment is the only chance that this chamber may ever have to end the government shutdown. If this chamber supports my amendment, we will pass a clean CR this afternoon. Now, if the majority really cared about helping those cancer patients access to health care, or letting the World War II veterans visit the monuments, and reopening the doors of the nation's parks and museums, they will vote for my amendment. The VA, by the way, has announced today that they are running out of money. Furthermore, passing a clean CR would actually do more to help the nation's veterans than the majority proposed to fund the Department of Veterans Affairs. Under the majority's proposal, the VA would receive $6 billion less than if we simply passed the Senate CR, which, in other words, has $6 billion more for the veterans than what you're proposing today. So for all the cries of concern, the majority's desire to shortchange the veterans by $6 billion tells you all that you need to know. And the veterans understand that. They know that they're being used as a pawn in this cynical political game, and they resent it. Now, far from honest policy, today's proposals are more cynical politics. For almost a week, the majority has found itself in a legislative box. Or at least I thought so till a little while ago. And the Rules Committee vote, and when they voted 9-4 not to open up the government, I realized that that was the aim all along. Now, because the Senate voted for cloture on a clean funding bill, a simple majority of senators have been able to put an end to the repeated attempts to dismantle the Affordable Health Care bill. Now, under these circumstances, the majority knows that it can't keep proposing ransom demands till they've broken cloture and returned to a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. The need to break cloture is why they tried to go to conference 15 minutes before the government shut down. And that's why they are continuing to avoid a clean vote on the Senate CR today. Mr. Speaker, 2 paragraphs in the Washington Post this morning sum up what this fight always has been and continues to be about: defunding the Affordable Care Act and taking health care away from 300 million Americans who have no insurance. Referring to yesterday's events, Ezra Klein of the Washington Post wrote, quote, "The top story all day was that Republicans had shut down the federal government because President Obama would not defund or delay the Affordable Care Act. The other major story was that government servers were crashing because so many people were trying to see if they could get the insurance through Obamacare. On the one hand, Washington was shut down because Republicans don't want citizens to have Obamacare. On the other hand, Obamacare was shut down because so many Americans did want that insurance." Yesterday was indeed a historic day for our nation and for every American who's ever been denied access to health care. In my home state of New York, there were more than 2 million visits to our online exchange in less than 90 minutes. And by later in the day, the last number that I have just for yesterday, 10 million people had visited the website at the end of the day. That is about 12% of the entire population of the state of New York yesterday. Meanwhile, 4.7 million people visited healthcare.gov yesterday, the national database, while almost 100,000 more visited online exchanges in Illinois and Colorado, most importantly in states from Kentucky to California. In red states and blue states, thousands of Americans went to sleep last night having purchased health insurance through the newly launched exchanges. Now, while those Americans went to bed realizing their long-awaited dream, the majority woke up this morning realizing that their worst nightmare had come true. Despite their best efforts, the American people were finally given access to safe and affordable health care. Now, the only question that remains is if the majority will finally acknowledge reality or if they will keep the government closed while they continue their quest to take America's health care away. I'm extremely grateful to the chairman of my committee this morning when he said, when we called for a vote on funding the government today, he said, and I quote, "I would say on behalf of the majority, what we think we are doing here today is probably some strange Republican viewpoints," end quote. I strongly urge my colleagues to reject the majority's latest gimmicks by voting no on the rule and the underlying legislation and vote for no on the PQ so that we can put our amendment on the floor. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman